Rozina Shiraz Gilani is a visual and performing artist, choreographer, and the founder and director of ATL Radical Arts. She is a first-generation American whose work uplifts testimony through movement and utilizes the narrative tool of Indian classical dance to challenge viewers with a radical disruption of normative thought. She is inspired by representations of identity, collective memory, and the most specific post-trauma as represented in motif production. Drawn to the power of testimony of the human condition and righteous fights to live with freedom and dignity, she creates multimedia, visual, and movement compositions that seek to challenge and activate her audiences. Over the past 14 years, she has worked on solo and collaborative dance projects, productions, and workshops internationally in the US, Hungary, Palestine, and Lebanon. After returning to Atlanta in 2016, Gilani was in search for a revolutionary art space and subsequently founded Atlanta's Radical Art Community in 2018. Now I'm going to tell you something about Atlanta Radical Art, or ATL Radical Art. ATL Radical Art is a collective of local artists, Atlanta artists, committed to the creation of radical and artistic counterculture in response to the social and political climate of our time. The collective's artists engage in performances, experiments that shed light on topics of international struggle, liberation, and protest from around the globe. ARA's vision is to create space and work that thrive independent of institutional funding, finding its strength in the community support. This community is primarily for people of color, women, queer, and trans artists across multiple disciplines, as well as accomplices who are working jointly with us towards similar goals and prioritize the visibility of said community in the Atlanta art scene. So we are about to have a conversation with Rozina Shiraz Gilani. Give it up. How are you, first of all?
Thanks for inviting me to have this conversation with you. I've been looking forward to it for a while now.
Excellent, excellent. So how are you doing? So look, a little check-in. If you were a color, what color would you be?
Oh my God.
And why?
Oh, that is a good one. Yeah, I don't know why purple came to mind immediately. And I'm not sure if it's just because there's a lot of purple in my environment, but yeah, I'm feeling good today. I think as a lot of us are experiencing, there are just a lot of ups and downs in this very odd moment. Odd, that's like the nicest word to use for it, in this very trying moment. But you know, conversations like this, as well as some work that we do in the community, helps to kind of invigorate and like find center again. And I guess that's what purple feels like. So
I don't know, that's what purple feels like to me as well. I feel it's a very grounding color for me. If I'm wearing all purple, people know the filter may or may not be on. So
okay, that's great.
People know me well. I have a couple of other questions that are not related to like the serious questions that we're going to get into. We're going to ease into that.
Sure.
So something that I've been asking guests that I have interviewed is like, what types of things are you doing for yourself as far as self-care goes? You know, I know that, you know, the work that we do as activists and as artists, I know that gives us some self-care, but what are some other ways that you are taking care of yourself in this time?
Yeah, that's an important question I ask myself often, because it is easy to kind of, you know, from a very passionate place, throw yourself into community work because there's such a need right now. When I am taking a break from that, I'm definitely in community with, you know, I have two housemates. We do a lot of, you know, sort of collaborative, like cooking and art making at home. And to be honest, I I've been on a lot of calls the past few months with friends in other parts of the world. Um, and friends here sometimes, because that's just how we communicate. And I think that a large part of what self-care looks like to me is feeling connected. And the pandemic has left a lot of us feeling isolated. So, at least once or twice a day, I'm having a call with a good friend or a family member. And the rest of the time, I'm taking care of myself, trying not to be too judgmental about my pandemic weight, and like the the parts of going through this that are just not really within our control. So it's a lot of patience and kindness as well that I'm trying to practice.
Yeah, it does get tricky. I think the strangest or most fun or most chaotic, I don't even know how to categorize it right now, thing I did on a Zoom call
Mhm.
was I went to a cocktail party on a Zoom call, and we were all instructed to download Cards Against Humanity on our phone, and we played Cards Against Humanity over Zoom. It was the wildest thing ever, and it actually
Yeah.
made sense. What have you done any of parties or any baby showers or anything on Zoom?
Yeah, so I've had game nights with my cousins. And actually, kind of at the start of quarantine, Navroz, Persian New Year, fell on the 21st of March. And I had it wasn't really a meal collectively. We all, I think, just brought drinks to the chat. And there were about 12 of us on Zoom, just in, again, very different parts of the world, getting to know new people, reconnecting with old friends. So I've had those types of gatherings. But moving forward, I know that like my birthday's coming up. I might like to do something creative around that, thinking to send like party kits to friends and having them join with, I don't know, some type of costume. I like to get a little weird on my birthday. So we'll see what comes out of it. But yeah, I'm definitely making the most and, trying to be innovative,
Yeah.
where we can.
Yeah, no, it's. I have two children who have birthdays this month, and part of us been trying to figure out what do we do to celebrate.
Yeah.
Last year my son, he turned 19. We went to this big old party thing for him, and it didn't happen. And so every once in a while he'll just walk by. He goes, "I guess I'm never gonna have a birthday party, am I?" It's gonna happen. It's just gonna look
It's a tough year to try to redeem yourself from that. I think, yeah, it's probably one of the more challenging birthday parties to plan. Do you have any
Yeah.
ideas?
I do not. Well, I actually thought that maybe we could like drive to a beach or, get a cabin or something, and just like hang out for the weekend. And then Zion is like, it's summertime and he doesn't like summer. He says it's too hot. He's like, that's outside, right? I'm like, yeah, we would be outside. He's just making it very, very difficult, but we're going to figure it out.
It's a good challenge.
Yes, it is a challenge. So I'm going to segue into some of our questions. First, I would like for you to kind of give us an overview of what you do through ATL Radical Arts and what are some of the projects and some of the things that you're working on currently.
Sure. So this is something I could give you the long version of the short version of. I'll go with the short. And so I like to sort of describe our work as guerrilla art. The arts in the history of arts has gone from being for the people to being, this thing up here that's just really inaccessible. In a language that you have to kind of, study the vocabulary of high art to be in those conversations. So we're like totally not interested in that. Bringing art back to the people in the communities where they live and addressing the struggles, the triumph, the personal testimonies that come from community. So bringing that back to, or maybe you could say carving space in the local art scene for that art. And inviting folks to engage with art who have been sort of averse to it in the past because of the inaccessibility. And of course, given the specific moment we're in right now, it's also, art has always been used as protest. And so I think that as a community, we're reinvigorated to really go with that. The circumstances are challenging because we're also supposed to be in isolation, but a lot of our art is about confronting and making folks uncomfortable with realities that they may not have either taken the time to see or have been concealed from them. So when I say we take art into the community, it's not necessarily like taking, South Asian art to the South Asian community, because a lot of that's shared experience, but it's taking our art to neighborhoods that probably don't want to see us there. But we're gonna get into that dialogue with them through these different modes of communication. So a lot of what we do is simulation, spoken word, slam poetry. We've had a lot of what someone would consider like half art, half protest. But for me, as an artist, I see it as one thing. And so the community is really a place to collaborate and co-create. And to also just work on addressing intersectional struggles, because, my experience is not the experience of every person in my community. And I think having conversations about the parallels are, what feed the sort of vibrancy of the radical art community. And we use radical very specifically because we aren't interested in, reforming or using language that, helps us hold hands and feel good together. We're like, all right, we can hold hands after we're fighting for the same thing together. So, come and be an accomplice with me. This is what we're fighting for. And this is, yeah, I think it's our approach is definitely one that seeks to move people further left, while appreciating that that there's a good bit of pushback when you do that, and that's okay. So I think I kind of went all over the place there, but that is bits and pieces of who we are. And we're also, we'll be 2 years old in September. So for me, that's very new, and we are definitely this evolving experiment. So, we take shape as the needs of the community come up. So always seeking to grow and build our community and come up with like really awesome ways of agitating through our art.
Yeah, I think that's kind of what draws me into being an artist as well as the way I present my art. Is you're doing a great job when you're literally run out of a town. I mean,
yeah,
there's nothing. Yeah, when you have to have an escort out, you have rubbed some feather in a way. And
right.
And I'm always hopeful that when those questions or those concerns come up, that ruffling of feathers, that it is also extending, my radicalness to when they complain to somebody about this thing happening, and maybe they continue the conversation, that needs to be had. Being an artist in this time, you do have to get like really, really creative right now about how we put our work out there, or how we are doing what we're doing. So here's some questions. How can we foster more intersectionality approaches to organizing for radical justice?
So this is something I think everyone in our community appreciates and promotes, but I think in practice it's really difficult in terms of recognizing, especially like, so as you introduced us, our, you know, our artists are, we have, I would say, so we have our membership is made up of artists and allies, or accomplices. And most of our artists, I would say all of our artists, are not white. They're coming from different communities that have been historically marginalized, and currently as much as well. And I think the intersectionality comes from like a very intentional practice of listening. And that's something that we always have to, you know, just because we're doing the work doesn't mean that we've got that figured out, you know. And I think, so one term that comes to mind is a sort of, and this is maybe more a conversation for other artists that are working with similar messaging, but understanding that like oppression is oppression, but ultimately like our relationships and the ways in which we're affected by it vary depending on a variety of our personal you know, representation, identification. So there are a whole lot of areas in my life where I am very privileged, you know, and so I can't speak to the experience of, you know, my comrades that are in other ways where I'm privileged are not as much, you know. So it's, I think it's interesting being in a community of color where, you know, our time is really spent on like providing a unified message. And I don't think that intersectionality challenges that in a way that it doesn't make it impossible, but it is expecting a lot out of communities who, again, are fighting collectively to appreciate the differences and the nuance, you know, of experience when it comes to oppression. So I guess my answer is like, I think even before creating, artists have to have a lot of really difficult conversations. You know, I lived in the Middle East for quite some time, and I hold the region very near and dear to my heart. I am a first generation American whose parents are from India. And India means a lot to me as well. The experience of South Asians in South Asia as well as in the US are very important to me. I also have a great deal of fire in my belly when it comes to the Middle East. Now, I'm put in a position where, as an ally or as an accomplice, I want to do so much to further a cause, but I also have to be reminded that I'm not from there. You know, 3-4 years in the region means I have an idea from my experience of privilege about what it's like to live and make art in that part of the world, but to very consciously choose, very intentionally choose to engage in those conversations about representation and how people want their story being told or not told is very important. And I think as artists, we have like a great platform to uplift stories. Yeah. But there's also great responsibility in making sure that you're doing it from a just and fair perspective. And again, that just comes back to listening and asking the right questions and being ready to unlearn a lot.
Yeah, and I think that's the tricky part for a lot of people, the unlearning.
Yeah.
And the listening. You know, that's also a thing.
It's all practice for sure.
Yeah. I think I had, you know, I had a kind of breakthrough moment with that because I don't usually commission poetry. Someone asked me to write a poem about, you know, their pastor or their whatever. I'm like, I don't know this person. You know this person. You should write that poem. You know, I've never been good at that. Plus, you know, my poems sort of punch people in the face, and I don't know if you want that face to be punched. and I don't know him. So, but I was asked to tell a story, to tell this man's story, and he is part of the Georgia Innocence Project. He was jailed for 28 years for a crime he did not commit. And, you know, meeting with him like over weeks and weeks and weeks and months, just to kind of like hear his story, realizing like the kind of privilege that I have, that I, even as a person of color, as I don't understand what it is to be a Black man in America. You know, I will never understand that. So, you know, having those conversations and just really having to listen and being like, and then also having a son and being like, oh my God, is this what you know what I mean? Like all of those things. And I ended up actually being able to tell his story in the form of a poem. And then I felt like, okay, I was able to do that, but I had to do a lot of listening, a lot of, you know, taking out my assumptions, my prejudices, my whatever, and just like putting them in a closet, you know, and it's like, don't come out.
Yeah.
Let me finish this. But it is really, the listening part is really hard. I think a lot of communities struggle with that. Do you all do any work where you go into struggling communities who are struggling with how they speak or how they listen or how they get along? Do y'all do any of that kind of work with other organizations?
Can you say a little bit more?
So say there's a community and they are not completely vibing, and y'all are accomplices with each other occasionally. Would your group go in and like have the conversations to try to get everybody like on the same place, or where they need to be, and what conversations they need to be having?
Yeah, I think that happens more on so as a collective, we're all individually working on our own projects. We don't create all of our work together.
Okay.
But I would say that a lot of those conversations are happening individually, and definitely at the start of any larger project where a coalition is working together. So certainly, you know, if we're providing support, understanding the need and creating the space for like, you know, a narrative that is not ours to be uplifted.
Right.
And understanding that, you know, and it's complicated because I certainly have felt a lot of imposter syndrome when it comes to being in a supportive role, because I don't want to tell it wrong, you know. And so as you were saying, it requires all of that listening, and what I've learned is that certainly it's not our story to tell, but it also shouldn't fall on those experiencing the strife to tell and to hold that sort of, you know, the burden or like the emotional labor that goes into fighting for their own struggle and alone. So it definitely is like, you know, we want to be careful not to narrate, but to create platforms where we can reach communities that maybe that specific community couldn't do on their own, due to like all of the different hurdles that you know come across in various communities around visibility and censorship. So I don't know that I answered your question, but I think it was just more about that dialogue that happens between community and artists, where the artist isn't necessarily speaking solely for themselves. It is a constant conversation. Yeah.
What tips do you have for reshaping America to be more inclusive, to be more to be less broken? Let's put it that way.
Yeah.
Especially when in relationships to people of color.
So one thing that sticks out to me a lot, especially in times like this where you have like companies, relying on their diversity inclusion employees to, pitch the next best like inclusive commercial. One thing I've realized that, through my own professional experiences and also just watching the way that America responds to crisis, I have very little enthusiasm when I see that your staff is diverse. But I have a lot of enthusiasm when I see that you aren't just hiring for the sake of diversity, but you are investing in the experiences of those who are on your staff. Or if you're talking about, cultural workers, there are a lot of situations where I've been approached to represent what life is like as a first generation brown woman, but do it in a way that's kind of sanitized. We want you to be there, but we don't want you to say too much about what the struggle is. Because if we look colorful, that's great. So I think that if the tips are going to be rooted in, again, something that I feel like I'll just keep echoing, the sort of like unlearning. So investing in like creating spaces where not only do you have representation, but you have authentic storytelling and you have, a genuine interest for testimony. That's just really hard to find in corporate America. That's hard to find in the arts, in like, the arts that are more, have a bigger production budget. A lot of what we make it's scrappy. It's scrappy because like no one wants to fund the work that, that rocks the boat so much.
Yeah.
And I think that if we are to move in the direction of, a more just and evolved society, we need to sort of reallocate that sort of support to artists that are not just showing up as a token, but are making a little bit of noise. So I guess as a community of cultural workers and artists, I would say I encourage more of that authentic testimony, that storytelling. And then in terms of like, how does the community support that? It's like creating more space for disruptive art. And I feel like that kind of like creating space for disruptive art, maybe just not shutting us down. That would be a start.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. I've had a beginning at the beginning of all of this, because 2020 has been a lot. And it's not even done yet.
Yeah.
But at the beginning of this, there was a lot of, and I don't even know what the word is for it. I know there is a word for it. So white people that I have like worked with, or, in any capacity, but wanting me to what's the word? To make sure that they were not the person in the poem that I was talking about, who all lives matter. Like, it's like, you want me to like, but I feel like that's work that you shouldn't ask me. And if you ask me that, then it probably was, and you probably know that, and that's why the question is there.
Yeah.
Yeah. But then also not wanting to be in that position to be, you're going to hire me to come in and do diversity training with you, but you don't want me to say what I need to say.
We want to talk about this, but don't make it political.
And don't make me uncomfortable, right?
Yeah.
So those conversations have been pretty tricky. But I've been a part of some really, really great conversations where I'm not speaking at all. I'm just listening to people, talk about what they talk. And I catch the eye, was like, did I say it right? I'm not going to confirm nor deny.
Yeah.
I'm just here to listen,
Yeah.
we will break it down at the end. So it's really been, I mean, this technology, this thing that we're doing now,
Mhm.
um, is something I think that is going to change the game for us as well as artists, being able to um, reach out to folks who are not just in our region or our community or our state or in our nation, to be able to connect and collaborate,
Yeah.
um, and cause, I like what you said, the disturbance, this disturb
Mhm.
artistically, um,
Yeah.
in tandem in different parts of the world. I mean, we have now a way to do that. So moving forward, how do you see um, this sort of technology that we use now, is like Zoom calls or all these, different spaces where you can interact with hundreds of people at one time. Um, as we move forward, um, how do you think this platform will meld into us moving back into social places, and then also how do you think this tool is going to be used moving forward once we get on
Yeah.
the other side of this?
Um, so it's tricky because we don't know what the sort of new normal will look like, but I hope that as we learn how beneficial this platform can be for accessibility purposes, we incorporate it in, the new work that we're making. Um, and to, not move everything to the computer, but to use it as a tool to reach wider audiences. Maybe have hybrid programming where you have on-screen and off-screen aspects to a production. Um, I think there's a lot of room for creativity. I also know that there's a learning curve that I struggle with right now, as a older millennial, but I think that there's just so much innovation happening right now, and there's so much development in terms of, like, every day I'm learning about something new that people are using on the internet. And like, I think I'm just right now embracing the awe of it, but there's going to be a point where, like, I really need to learn and to catch up if I'm going to keep producing in, what will necessarily be a very digital art platform. uh but yeah, I think I'm just really curious to see what that'll be like. I'm not really sure. I'm not sure where our collective fits into that. I mean, I know that we already have a lot of artists that work digitally, that do a lot with, sound and image. And I think that we're probably going to learn a lot from them as well. Because they might have a better idea of, like, where they can take their work and how we can come along with them.
Like,
That's my hope, at least.
I
Yeah.
know, right?
Yeah.
I'm trying to get better, like in this new that, like, I for a while there, my brain was just not accepting new information.
Yeah.
It was like, no, we're 55, we don't have to learn anything new. Yes, we
That
do.
was the deal.
I
Yeah.
know, like, we had a deal. So yeah, so I just feel great, and it's like a personal, like, shoulder dance in the chair, you know, when I can do something with this technology that I was so tempted to call my daughter and be like, how do I do this? When I figure it out, I'm just all like, and then it's like, oh, we
Yeah.
probably should have already knew how to do that.
That's not new. We've been doing that for like years now. Okay, well,
Yeah,
yeah.
no, it's everything is wild. As we close out, are there any things that have two closeout questions for you that are not related to any of the stuff that we've been talking about? But at
Okay.
this time, I would like for you to let folks know if something is coming up that they can attend, where they can um, donate or whatever you need, or how to find you.
Sure. So I'll start with how to find us, because every day we're up to a lot, which, is beautiful and also sad because it comes out of the circumstances that we're in. But I would recommend people follow us on our social media accounts. So that's ATL Radical Art on Facebook, Instagram is at ATL Radical Art. Twitter is at ATL Radical Art. And we have a website that we're still trying to, it's there. It's there. It's informative, but it's just not as well maintained. We're working towards that. And that's atlradicalarts.com. As I said earlier, we are still in our very experimental stage. We've done a lot considering how long we've been around, but we also are growing, and we seek a lot of not only community support, but like artists' presence and creative work. So definitely encourage folks who are, feeling like their work aligns with what we've been talking about to reach out and join us, because there's just limitless opportunities. That being said, we also are, we work off of community fundraising. So if folks want to somehow contribute and support our work, again, we would love to hear from you. Right now we are, we're doing a couple of things that are very important. So the first is a project that utilizes memorial murals. And so currently we've been in partnership with the Justice for Jamarian campaign. And I think as of now, we have 8 murals around the city of Atlanta that are the portrait of Jamarian Robinson and seek to uplift his story and get some justice. And his is the first of a series of murals that we'll be doing. So, all of the families who have lost family members to police murder in Georgia, the larger metro Atlanta area, will have the opportunity to be commemorated through these murals. So again, there aren't any institutions involved in this effort. So we are actively seeking funds to, pay for the supplies. Most of the artists are doing this out of like the goodwill of their hearts, and they're mostly people who are, already aligned and involved in community organizing, and also being, they're brilliant artists. So we really want to make sure that, we're able to cover the cost of materials, as well as provide honorariums to, a lot of what we do is just emphasizing the labor of creating art and wanting to really insist on dignified pay when it comes to doing any type of art in the community. So that's one effort that we're really focusing on. That will be a continual, I think this project will last quite some time. So we will have on our social media accounts, links to places where people can contribute at capacity, of course. And something I didn't say earlier is that anytime we program, our ticket sales, go towards the artists, but they're also always pay what you can, because we never want there to be any barriers to access for anyone to access our art and our messaging. The second one is definitely more timely in that we are trying to, garner support from the city of Atlanta, from folks here, to help with the disastrous situation in Beirut right now. I personally have ties there, so it is, a very it's personally very important to me, but I also understand, again, how many parallels come with situations like this around the world. It's Beirut today. And so we would like to ask the community to come forward, stand with Beirut, and to help, the some 300,000 people who are facing homelessness at this given moment. And that is just, you know, the lowest number that can be predicted. So the death and destruction is just beyond description. And so we are holding a vigil this evening. If anyone watching is available, please join us. We will be safe, we will be wearing masks, but we will take an hour of our day out to hold vigil for the hundreds of thousands of people who have been affected, and kindly request that people donate at capacity to the Lebanese Red Cross. It's very important to say that because I think people are always confused about where to send like disaster relief funds. The Lebanese Red Cross is doing the best on the work ground, going to be reaching people directly. So that's where we will be sending any money raised from tonight, as well as, you know, where we'll be pointing people towards on social media. So those are two like active things going on. But like I said, we're doing a lot every day. Of course, we've been in the streets over the past couple of months with a coalition of organizations working on Black Lives Matter. And pretty much, you know, we're responding to situations. That's the role that we've taken on. And we hope that our art can help to uplift messages of, you know, a demand for justice.
Yeah.
Here and globally.
Yeah. Ooh, yes. So much going on. Yeah, my brain is in all kinds of places. I also totally had an idea for a video art project, and I will talk to you about that different time, not in front of Facebook, because they'll hear my idea and they'll be like, Theresa is brilliant, and then they'll take it. But I'm gonna definitely get in touch with you about this idea that I just could be wrong.
Please, I would love that. Yeah.
Okay.
Yes, absolutely. And for, again, anyone who feels even slightly inspired by this conversation, the type of work that we're doing, we are always seeking to work collaboratively. Or if your art just needs a platform to exist on, that's something that we really, you know, that's one of our, you know, founding principles, that artists should have platforms. And, you know, we don't have the biggest one, but we can help provide with the platform that we have.
Yeah. Excellent. All right, this is our closeout question.
Okay.
Are you ready? So,
I don't know. You started with a really good one. I don't know. Let's see. Go ahead.
So as we have, you know, spent the last 4 or 5 months in our homes, what is something that you have done that you surprised yourself by? It could be in a cooking fashion. It could be in I pulled out the old sewing machine and what did you do that surprised yourself?
Oh my gosh, this is really depressing. I don't think I've done that much. Surprised me.
Did you cook a meal you didn't cook before, or follow a recipe? I don't know.
No, I mean, those are all like really cool. So my housemate is a brilliant cook, and I'm super spoiled because of it. So I guess the most exciting thing is I have tried things I've never tried before. I had vegan ceviche the other day. That's probably the most adventurous thing that I've done. It was so good. It was so, look.
I don't know. I don't
advocate for all things vegan, certainly not. But if anyone got close to the real thing, it was this dish made by my husband.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, cool.
So that's been interesting. But now I'm gonna have to work on kind of creating some more self-administered adventures. Yeah. Wait, what have you done?
Well, the most recent, I actually started doing a line of pandemic greeting cards that are actually recycled Altoid tins.
Okay.
So yeah, so I've been doing that, and because years ago I had this company called Mental Notes where I made handcrafted books, journals, cards, things like that. So so now the pandemic tends, I don't know if you see that.
Oh.
And then I jot down the first crazy greeting that comes to my head. I got like 20 of them, and they're all kind of messed up. So this says, so when the world stops sucking, can we like grab a drink and discuss how uncomfortable we are hanging out in person?
I hope this message finds you well.
I don't know.
Wait, are you just making these or are you sending these out?
I've been making them and sending them randomly to friends. Some of them are sewing kits, some of them are like little manicure kits. But no, it's just my arts and craftsy stuff kind of came back pretty hard for a minute, and yeah, because I mean, like when I'm writing, but I'll finish part of the poem. I'm like, I already wrote that poem. I wrote that poem 4 years ago. I wrote that poem 12 years ago. You know, it's that because I write politically, and I'm so happy that everybody else is suddenly shocked at how racist America is. But we've been writing this same poem for decades.
Yeah, it's very bizarre to
and so it makes me want to throw things, and things are expensive, so we don't throw them. But yeah. So that's kind of been what I've been doing with this. But the last thing I want to know is what is the thing you're looking most forward to doing when the world opens back up?
Dancing.
I
mean, okay, so I'm a solo artist for the most part, but I'm also classically trained. So a lot of what I do more professionally is very regulated. It's classical dance. And I mean, like, that's not exactly fair because I do break a lot of rules in my performance. But for me, absolute bliss is going out salsa dancing. I'm still like, I would say I'm at an intermediary level, but it is incredibly freeing. There's improvisation that takes place, connection, just being in the music, feeding off the energy of that environment is probably it's my favorite thing ever. So not having that has felt really it's been tough, but that is going to be the very first thing that I do. And it will suck for the first bit because I will have lost a lot of what I know. But I'm looking forward to that.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much for having our chat today. Again, this is Rozina Shiraz Gilani with ATL Radical Art. And hopefully the information, I know the information was spoken. Hopefully it's in the chat. If not, it is definitely in the event on the Facebook page for the ArtsXchange. The ArtsXchange thanks you for hanging out with us for a while. And we will see you again next week. Thank you so much. Thank you again. Stay safe, stay hydrated. And I'm going to be calling you or emailing you about this amazing idea we're going to do.
I'm so excited. Thanks so much for having me on. You take care as well.
You too.